The dissolution of the Duma in September 1915 was a direct challenge to the bourgeoisie, not to the workers. But while the liberals were dispersing with cries of "Hurrah!" to be sure, not very enthusiastic cries, the workers of Petrograd and Moscow responded with strikes of protests. That cooled off the liberals still more. They feared worst of all the intrusion of an uninvited third party in their family discussion with the monarchy. But what further step was to be taken? Accompanied, accompanied by a slight growl from the left wing, liberalism cast its vote for a well-tried recipe to stand exclusively on legal grounds and render the bureaucracy as it were unnecessary in the course of a mere fulfillment of their patriotic functions. The ministerial slate at any rate will have to be laid aside for a time. The situation in those days was getting worse automatically. In May 1916, the Duma was again convoked, but nobody knew exactly what for. The Duma, in any case, had no intention of summoning a revolution, and aside from that, there was nothing for it to say. At that session, Rodzianko remembers, the proceedings were languid, the deputies attended irregularly, the continual struggle seemed fruitless. The government will listen to nothing. Irregularities were increasing, and the country was headed for ruin. In the bourgeoisie's fear of revolution and its impotence without revolution, the monarchy found during the year 1916 a simulacrum of social support. By autumn, the situation was still worse. The hopelessness of the war had become evident to all. The indignation of the popular masses threatened any moment to flow over the brink, while attacking the core party as before for Germanophilism. The liberals now deemed it necessary to fill out the chances of peace themselves, preparing their own future. Only in this way can you explain the negotiations of one of the leaders of the Progressive Bloc, the deputy Protopopov, with the German diplomat Harburg in Stockholm in the autumn 1916. The Duma delegation, making friendly visits to the French and English, could easily convince itself in Paris and London that the dear allies intended in the course of the war to squeeze all the life joys out of Russia. In order after the victory to make this backward country their chief field of economic exploitation. A defeated Russia in tow to a victorious intent would have meant a colonial Russia. The Russian processing classes had no other course but to try to free themselves from the too close embrace of the intent and find an independent road to peace, making use of the antagonism of the two more powerful camps. The meeting of the Duma deputy with the German diplomat as a first step of this road was both a tread in the direction of the Allies with a view of gaining concessions and a feeling out of the actual possibilities of reapproachment with Germany. Protopopov, Protopopov, Protopopov was acting in agreement not only with the Tsarist diplomats. The meeting occurred in the presence of the Russian ambassador in Sweden, but also with the whole delegation of the State Duma. Incidentally, the liberals, by means of this reconnoitre, were pursuing a not unimportant domestic goal. Rely on us, they were hinting to the Tsar, and we will make you a separate piece better and more reliable than Strum can. According to Protopopov scheme, that is, the scheme of his backers, the Russian government was to inform the Allies several months in advance that she would be compelled to end the war, and that if the Allies refuses to institute peace negotiations, Russia will have to conclude a separate peace with Germany. In this confession, written after the revolution, Protopopov speaks as of something which goes without saying, the fact that all reasonable people in Russia, among them probably all the leaders of the Party of the People's Freedom, cadets, were convicted that Russia was unable to continue the war. The Tsar, to whom Protopopov, upon his return, reported his journey and negotiations, treated the idea of a separate peace with complete sympathy. He merely did not see the necessity of drawing the liberals into the business. The fact that Protopopov himself was included incidentally in the staff of the Corps Camarilla, having broken with the Progressive Bloc, is explained by the personal character of this fop, who had fallen in love, according to his own words, with the Tsar and the Tsarina, and at the same time, we may add, with an expected portfolio as Minister of the Interior. But this episode of Protopopov's treason of the liberal does not alter the general content of the liberal foreign policy, a mixture of greed, cowardice, and treachery. The Duma again assembled on November 1st. The tension in the country has become unbearable. Decisive steps were expected of the Duma. It was necessary to do something, or at the very least say something. The Progressive Bloc found itself compelled to resort to parliamentary exposures. Counting over the tribune the chief steps taken by the government, Malyukov asked after each one, "Was this stupidity of treason?" High notes were sounded also by other deputies. The government was almost without defenders. It answered in the usual way. The speeches of the Duma orators were forbidden publication. The speeches therefore circulated by the million. There was not a government department, not only in the rear but at the front, where the forbidden speeches were not transcribed, frequently with additions corresponding to the temperament of the transcriber. The reverberation of the debate of November 1 was such that terror seized the very authors of the arrangement. The group of extreme rightists, sturdy bureaucrats inspired by Durnovo, who had put down the revolution of 1905, took that moment to present to the Tsar a proposed program. The eye of this experienced officials trained in a serious police school saw not badly and pretty far in their and if their prescription was no good, it is only because no medicine existed for the sickness of the old regime. The authors of the program speak against any concessions, whatever the bourgeois opposition, not because the liberals want to go too far, as think the vulgar black hundreds, upon whom these officials reactionaries look with some scorn, not the trouble in that the liberals are so weak, so disunited, and so and to speak frankly, so mediocre that their triumph will be as brief as it will be unstable. The weakness of the principal opposition party, the Constitutional Democrats, cadets, is indicated, they point out, by its very name. It is called democratic when it is in essence bourgeois. Although to a considerable degree a party of liberal landlords, it has signed a program of compulsory land redemption. Without these triumphs from a deck not their own, write these secret concealers, using the images to which they are accustomed, the cadets are nothing more than a numerous association of liberal lawyers, professors, and officials of various departments, nothing more. A revolutionist, they point out, is a different thing. They accompany their recognition of the significance of a revolutionary parties with a grinding of teeth. The danger and strength of these parties lies in the fact that they have an idea, they have money, they have a crowd ready and well organized. The revolutionary parties can count on the sympathy of an overwhelming majority of the peasantry, which will follow the proletariat the very moment the revolutionary leaders point a finger to other people's land. What would a responsible ministry yell in these circumstances? A complete and final destruction of the right parties, a gradual swallowing of the intermediate parties, the center, the liberal conservatives, the Octobrists, and the progressives of the cadet party, which at the beginning would at decisive importance, but the same fate will manage the cadets, and afterwards will come the revolutionary mob, the commune, destruction of the dynasty, pogroms of the possessing classes, and finally the peasant brigand. It is impossible to deny that the police anger here rises to a certain kind of historic vision. The positive part of their program was not new but consistent: a government of ruthless partisans of the autocracy, abolition of the Duma, martial law in both capitals, preparation of forces for putting down a rebellion. This program did in its essentials become the basis of the government policy of the last revolutionary months. But its success supposed a power which Durnovo had in his hands in the winter of 1905, but which in the autumn of 1917 no longer existed. The monarchy tried therefore to strangle the countries stealthily and in sections. Ministers were shifted upon the principle of our people, meaning those unconditionally devoted to the Tsar and Tsarina, but these our people, especially the renegade Protopopov, were insignificant and pitiful. The Duma was not abolished, but again dissolved. The declaration of martial law in Petrograd was saved for a moment when the revolution had already triumphed and the military forces prepared for putting down the rebellion. The rebellion were themselves seized by rebellion. All this became evident after 2 or 3 months. Liberalism in those days was making its last efforts to save the situation. All the organizations of the enfranchised bourgeoisie supported the November speeches of the Duma opposition with a series of new declarations. The most important of these was the resolution of the Union of Cities on December 9. Irresponsible criminals, fanatics, are preparing for Russia's defeat, shame, and slavery. The State Duma was urged not to disperse until the formation of a responsible government is attained. Even the State Council, organ of the bureaucracy and the vast properties, expressed itself in favor of calling to power people who enjoyed the confidence of the country. A similar intercession was made by a session of the united nobility. Even the most covered stones cried out. But nothing was changed. The monarchy will not let the last shreds of power slip out of its hands. The last session of the last Duma was convoked, after wavering and delays, on February 14, 1917. Only 2 weeks remained before the coming of revolution. Demonstrations were expected. In the cadet organ reached, alongside an announcement by the chief of the Petrograd military district, General Kabalov, forbidding demonstrations, was printed a letter from Milyukov warning the workers against dangerous and bad counsel. Issuing from dark sources, in spite of strikes, the opening of the Duma was sufficiently peaceful, pretending that the question of power no longer interested. The Duma occupied itself with a critical but still strictly business question: food supplies. The mood was languid, and Rodzianko subsequently remembered. We felt the importance of the Duma, weariness of the futile struggle. Milyukov kept repeating that the progressive bloc will act with words and with words only. Such was the Duma that entered the whirlpool of February Revolution.